My secret identity, old chum.
Oh, jeez. Hey, kids, comics. Silver-haired Bronze Age babe here, yakking about her comic book collection. And today I'm joined by my friend Rob, who has dressed for the occasion. Bobby Caps. Say hello to
the SHBAB community.
To the SHBAB community.
There we
oh
go.
My goodness!
Yeah.
Thank you for joining me, and do tell us about yourself. Oh my gosh!
Well, I own the tux. I haven't worn it in a year. With the quarantine snacks I've been eating, I would say that the tux now owns me.
Yeah.
So I just thought I would put it on and have a little fun.
Very charming.
I'm very happy to be your inaugural sidekick for this live discussion.
Yes, you are. You are a guinea pig, a finely dressed guinea pig, to see if I can do this correctly. And I hope we are. It seems like we're going live. I see live. I'm not sure I'm seeing anybody in the chat yet, but it doesn't matter because people will watch this afterwards, I'm sure. So,
there we go.
Well, Rob, first, before we get to talking about Darwyn, Cooke and the New Frontier, talk a little bit about your history with collecting and comic books, because I know, but no one else does.
Right. Yeah. So I think growing up, I grew up in actually what I now realize was a crappy time to read comic books, which is the late 80s, early 90s, with all the foil covers and the grim dark. Everyone's trying to be Watchmen.
Yeah.
We decided to kill Superman. We decided to break Batman's back. We put Wonder Woman in biker shorts.
Right.
It was kind of an awful time to read comics. So it's actually kind of a shock that I'm still a fan. And so, I've been reading. I can tell you my very first comic was a Batman comic. It was A Lonely Place of Dying, written by Marv Wolfman and George Perez. And was influenced, of course, by the Michael Keaton Batman movie, but even the Adam West Batman TV show and Super Friends and all that growing up. So, Christopher Reeve, it was my Superman. Although I will say, I think Terry Hatcher is my Lois Lane from the Lois and Clark TV series.
We should do a whole other live dive on Superman and Lois as we love. Because that is a subject that people can talk about for a long time. And speaking of talking, Tony is in the chat. Hello, Tony.
Hey, Tony.
And the Jackson Roy Kirk. Hello. Both of you have been so kind and left lovely comments on my videos, and we're thrilled to have you here because it is 5:00 Eastern Standard Time.
Cheers, old chum.
There we go. Nice, because that means it's cocktail hour. So.
Calcium does you good.
It does.
Yeah.
So we're here to talk about this book. Now I'm going to give a little preamble here that, let me see if I can show it. This is the trade paperback copy of The New Frontier, when did this come out, Rob? This is originally in 2004?
The original series is March 2004 is the cover date. And that trade paperback came out, I want to say, maybe about 8 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my friend Rob and I had lunch in beautiful downtown Ann Arbor one day. And as we normally do, we go over to the comic book shop. And we're wandering the aisles. And he said, "Have you read this?" And I said, "I don't know what you're talking about." And so he put it in my hands and said, "Now go give the nice people your money and take it home and read it."
I kind of was very insistent.
You were a little pushy, but it's okay. A little pushy on it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be honest with you, Rob. When I looked at the cover, I was like, "Oh boy, it looks like a cartoon." I get it. That's not Superman. That's not Batman. And then I took it home and I opened it. And by page 2, I was in. Couldn't put it down in. Mm-hmm. And so this is such a epic. It's an absolute epic of a story. And I think, we probably don't want to give spoilers in case anyone hasn't read it.
Yeah.
But, if you want, I know you have the original books, do you not? And would like to show some of... Hey, Just a Ricanist Comics. Rod's here. Hello, Rod.
Hey.
Thank you for joining. We appreciate it. We do.
I know my friend Joe is watching this now because he was texting me on my phone. But
good.
On my mother box. So,
okay. Right.
Yeah. So, this is one of those things where I was, reading buying the single issues of things, and around 2003 2004 a lot of my stuff had kind of finished up, and I was kind of honestly again sick of comic books. I was reading Neil Gaiman's Sandman, it was over. Reading Grant Morrison's Invisibles, over. James Robinson's Starman, over. And so I decided, I actually picked up both issues 1 and 2 at the same time. And you'll notice that as the issues progress that the fonts start to change, right? So here he's got like the war comic, and then this is like, so things start to change. And I'm going to point out a few other things, for those who don't know what we're talking about. What is the New Frontier? The whole premise actually goes around a couple of rules. It's Darwyn Cooke's 6-issue series and one special where he's looking at the birth of the Silver Age, which people generally say is, Barry Allen, showcased 1956. And what he does is he blends kind of all the characters in one. So like when SHBAB said it was...
That's okay. They know me as Sarah. That's fine.
I didn't want to give it away, old chum. When Sarah says, it's an epic, it was great about it is that it's an epic featuring almost every DC character that's not a crossover, that's not a sales stunt. It really blends the war comics and Dinosaur Island and the Challengers of the Unknown. And it starts at this point in time when Barry Allen becomes the Flash, and then it kind of ultimately unfolds into an origin story involving the Martian Manhunter, and you'll notice there's a different font there.
I didn't even notice that.
There's, this is kind of Aquaman, but really it becomes the origin story of Hal Jordan, Green Lantern, who debuted a year after Barry Allen did. Mm-hmm. And what I love about this, is Darwyn Cooke's, again, normally for those of you who are horrified at home that I don't have a backing board, the reason why is because I wanted to show the front and back covers. I mean, these covers, what they do is kind of, I almost want to say like primitive kind of pencil charcoal style.
Yep.
But then you flip, to the back cover, and this more looks like what the interior is, which is kind of based on Alec Toth, who was Hanna-Barbera, a little bit based on Jack Kirby. For those of you who don't know, Darwyn Cooke actually got his start working in animation on like Batman Beyond and a few things. So he...
Oh, that's why I looked at it and I said, why I looked at it and said, oh, that's a cartoon, because that's where he came from. Okay. Yeah,
this is the back of issue 1, which kind of explains, why is Batman not around. This Wonder Woman on the back of issue 2, so here you have that kind of primitive Barry Allen cover, and then you've got this Wonder Woman, which I can't wait to hear your opinion on that, Sarah. It looks like we've got a lot of people talking here.
I know. Hey, the Gray Man is here. The Gray Man.
He's asking about my Eyes Wide Shut cosplay. I love it. The thing is if I do this, it's because I need my glasses. But if I put my glasses on, then I look like Alfred. Remember when Alfred would go undercover?
Yes. I think it works.
He'd wear the glasses on top of the mask. Actually, this does kind of work.
Just keep doing that.
Yeah, I can read. I can actually read now.
Is this Eyes Wide Shut cosplay? Way to go, Gray Man. Yeah. I told you it was experimental. So, well, what amazed me was that, I when you dive into it, it starts out, as you say, on Dinosaur Island. And I knew enough about the Silver Age comics to remember just in my head that the soldiers with, shooting bazookas at a dinosaur that's coming up. So it's like, when you have that kind of comic book stuff baked into your DNA, it's like it's instant recognition, right, when you go through this thing. Now I didn't know specifics on all the characters because they aren't, their war books and stuff like that I wasn't collecting, but I knew enough. So, and the fact that they focus on not Superman and not Batman, and Wonder Woman only has a supporting role in this thing. But
somewhat, I would argue.
Yeah, she's important. She's an important character to the.
I guess what I'm going to argue is ultimately what Darwyn Cooke says is that it's going to begin at the end of the Golden Age, and he wants to get to this cover.
Yes.
And she's on this cover. She's one of the original members.
Yep.
So and so Aquaman really has no part at all.
Right.
He has kind of a cameo. So it's really Barry, Hal, and John, and then Diana, of course, is a carryover from the Golden Age. So they deal with her, and then they kind of also figure out, I think, some clever ways to take her off the board, so to speak.
Yes. Yeah. What is the other thing that immediately sucked me in was the tip of the hat, and more than that, to the film The Right Stuff.
Yeah.
Which came out in 78, 79, something like that. And I saw it in the theater when it came out, and I was gobsmacked then. I mean, I'm a big, huge fan of, like, if you want to NASA, go to space, I'm all over it.
And we should say one of the reasons why we kind of said, let's do this video this week was because of the SpaceX launch last weekend.
Exactly.
And that excitement of watching astronauts get launched off again. I mean, that space age optimism is very much infused in the book.
Yep.
And then also the book kind of addresses the lack of Black characters in the Silver Age, which there were echoes of things in the book that were being echoed on the streets this week too. So it's a weirdly timeless and timely book.
Well, yeah, Rob and I were talking before we hit the live broadcast button that rereading this book this week is a very emotional experience. Actually, this book talks. Yes, it's a comic book, but it talks about all of the social stuff that was going on between the end of World War II and 1957, when the Silver Age starts and when, the Justice League officially forms. You've got civil rights, you've got, the House on American Activities Committee. There you go.
So they used the Paul Levitz device of the House of Un-American Activities, removing the Justice Society, making them go into retirement. And he's very much influenced by James Ellroy, who will write stories about, fictional characters, but then he'll incorporate the Kennedys and things. And so, like, here you have, sorry, I'm still getting used to how this thing, here you have Edward R. Murrow, and he's saying, what if I told you about a group of people who are being terrorized? And what Darwyn Cooke does to kind of get around the fact that there were, that John Stewart, the first African-American Black superhero in the DC Comics universe, doesn't debut until the 70s. He brings in the character of Steel, who was one of the replacement Supermen from my days of reading comics.
Okay.
And he has him he brings that guy in, and John Jones is sitting here with Slam Bradley, and everyone's sort of listening to this horrifying story of lynching. Yep. And John Jones is like, wait a second, I don't know if I want to be on this earth anymore. I have to adjust myself to accommodate the people who would kill me.
Yes.
And so these themes, like you were saying, are just rereading it, you can't help but just you
can't really it feels of the moment. Ranger Sly, hey, how are you? Dang, you missed the beginning, but guess what? This will apparently rerun in perpetuity. You can't get away from it.
Do I get royalties? No. Like Burt Ward? No.
But it really is this just epic pastiche of, mid-century Americana. In rereading it this week, I was thinking of things like, Don McLean's American Pie song, or even that Billy Joel, We Didn't Start the Fire, and particularly this week, where we are living history. We are living history, writ large at this time in America and around the world. And I think comic books, this is a great example of comic books being able to have those conversations as well, and to be able to do it in a way that is engaging and fun. I mean, you were talking before about how a lot of these characters, it's like, oh my God, I think they're smiling, they're happy, sometimes. So,
yeah. So that's the thing. He has a cartoony style because it comes from animation. And he definitely has a love of like that whole kind of, kind of that Rat Pack, kind of heterosexual masculinity, suave, right? That kind of suave, Mad Men, sexy, but he's also progressive enough to, I think, give women their proper due. And there's actually a very good reason for that in his origin story. He was actually, there's this great issue called Solo. If you guys love Darwyn Cooke, you should track down this issue. It's also collected in this graphic ink book, which has a collection of all his covers and short stories. It just has everything. But he, he met this woman. He has a story in here. It's this origin story. He meets this woman, Roberta Storms. This is him as a boy, and he's with his father in this story called World Window, and it's all yellow, right? And then the father and the guy are having conversations in the back, but then you start to notice the color changes, and it's because he meets this woman who is an artist who is the wife of his father's friend, and she gives him paints, and he goes home, and his life returns to yellow, but it still remains, just that little bit of green there, and they influence him.
I have to say, let's talk a little bit about Wonder Woman in the New Frontier. I gotta say, I think from my perspective, it was a kind of a swing and a bit of a miss. But yeah, so you first meet her in Indochina as what becomes the Vietnam War is kind of burbling up. Magic Lasso is here. Yes, just in time. We're going to talk about Wonder Woman. So there, Rob's holding up the first page there that you see her. And she is in a hut in Indochina with a bunch of women and they are drunk as skunks. And she is celebrating the fact that she liberated them from sexual slavery and abuse. Now here's which is great, where I kind of fall off the bandwagon a little bit, is that she left the captors' guns on the ground, and basically the women decided to pick them up and slaughter their captors.
Yeah.
And Wonder Woman is kind of celebrating with them about that. Cal shows up and they have this conversation about, is this, how can you do this? I'm of two minds of it. Number one, it's like, oh gosh, I think it's a perfect conversation to have. I think it's a great conversation and debate. It's a fair fight that these two characters are having about that choice. Right. I think Wonder Woman is the wrong character to represent that side of the argument, because I'm not familiar with a Wonder Woman depiction that has that kind of vengeance or callousness. Yes, she could be a warrior, and some people really.
It may have almost been better if, like, the women of Paradise Island had rescued them, and then maybe one of her sisters allowed that. So you can still have the conflict, but like, Wonder Woman is, compassionate and maybe somebody else, on the island might have said, well,
screw that.
We're warrior women. This is what we do.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So it was kind of a miss. Although I just think that it's fantastic that, that conversation and there's no reason it can't be had in a comic book, quite frankly. And so it's
My favorite twist on this, though, is if you look at how she's built, like the entire time she's having this conversation, she's sitting on a table, kneeling, and then when she steps off the table, you realize she's taller than Superman.
Yes.
So he draws her like an Olympian.
Yeah.
Right. This isn't, again, reading comic books in the 90s, my Wonder Woman, sadly, was always a wafy supermodel with a G-string bikini. And this is a woman.
This is different.
This is a warrior woman. But you're right. That point of view, that's not a perfect book. I will tell you, this is a book that I would probably take with me to a desert island.
Yes.
If I could only read one thing. It's not a perfect book, and that's one area where it's not perfect. So I agree with you.
Yeah, and Grayman is piping in here, and it says in Greek mythology it makes more sense, but not in comic mythology. Absolutely. Yeah, that's well, exact. You said it gooder than I did, Grayman, because that's what I was trying to get to. But and the women in the story, the rest of the female characters here is fine, but it's Silver Agey stuff. I mean, Lois is in the background, and so is Carol Ferris. Although I thought her portrayal was fun and interesting, and her interplay with Hal Jordan is great. Iris West, and if I could, I'm going to find this. I really
show this Carol Ferris. I think she just looks so beautiful.
Yes,
here, I bookmarked this page because. Again, this is where he's embracing, as Carmine Infantino and everyone else did, they embraced those new hairstyles for the women when they were redoing like Sue Gibney and a few characters.
Yep.
And, Carol Ferris was one of them, and she just looks like a woman of that Mad Men era. Yep. And what I love is that Hal is he said was based on Burt Lancaster.
Yeah.
From Here to Eternity. But you were going to point out another moment, too, about Iris West, is it?
Barry Allen. And the Flash, and how the art captures the sense of speed. He is racing right now to Las Vegas to save Iris and a bunch of people from, is it Mr. Cold or whatever his name is?
Captain Cold.
Captain Cold.
Who looks like
Mr. Bird. But I mean, that is it. The art is just so compelling in this thing, and he, there are tips of his hat and homages to Jack Kirby.
And this one, I literally just flipped on this page. This is actually now I have the Absolute Edition, which has these wonderful footnotes in the back. I don't know if yours does.
Yes, I do, and but mine isn't as heavy because mine's paperback. So
yeah, so this cover is actually a Challengers of the Unknown cover, but you can tell from that monster's forehead as it's coming out of the sea. I mean, that's a Jack Kirby forehead right there.
Yeah, yeah. And there's some picture. There's some. There's a Jimmy Olsen shot of him and Lois. Oh well, I don't know. This is what aren't you guys glad you didn't pay for this? Because God, we could do better than that. So yeah, it is it's a history lesson and a Saturday serial, and there you go. And there's the hero shot.
Yeah,
right?
The right stuff.
You
mentioned the right stuff earlier.
Yes. If any of you haven't, did you see the movie, Rob?
I have not. I was going to watch it. I was going to watch it, and then we moved this up. I was going to do this another day, and we moved this up, so I haven't had a chance to see it yet. But I will watch it.
You will, and you will love it. So for the folks, for the Right Stuff fans, you are going to feel, if you haven't read The New Frontier, you're going to feel very at home reading this series. So now, Rob, I know you have additional art from Darwyn Cooke. I don't know if you want to show it and talk about how you got it and how what.
Yeah, so this they did an animated. I don't know if you know this, Sarah. They actually adapted this into an animated film.
I did know that, and it's on my list of things I guess I'm going to have to rent because I couldn't find it for free on any of my on-demand things.
I know we have 20 of them, and you never get
I prefer free, but this is so good. Unless you tell me it's a dog, at which point I won't bother.
No, I like it because Kyle MacLachlan does the voice of Superman, David Boreanaz is the voice of Hal Jordan, Neil Patrick Harris is the voice of Flash. So I like it. But this special came out a few years later, when they were doing a collection, and it includes a bunch of short stories. Yeah. I mean, what you were saying, these don't look like your heroes, but it includes this missing chapter in here, chapter 10, The Greater Good.
Yeah.
And in this chapter, this tries to explain why kind of, Wonder Woman works kind of undercover for the government. Superman works in public for the government. And then, of course, Batman works in the shadows. And how do they kind of come to that agreement is what this chapter kind of says. And that doesn't spoil anything in the New Frontier, but it just sort of explains where those three are in relation to one another. But this spread right here, which is where, Batman eludes Superman by, I think, squirting oil or something. And Superman crashes into the wall, and Batman, crashes his car into the Batcave. And then there's Superman, and then you see, my alter ego, Alfred, here. And Batman sneaking into the Batcave, and then Superman flying in. Now,
and there's a funny joke in there, too, about beautiful job parking, sir.
Yeah. If I may, sir, that was an exemplary bit of parking.
Right.
In 2016, Darwyn Cooke was going to come to the Boston Comic Con, and I collect Superman sketches, which is something I haven't shown you yet, but we'll do that on another time.
Great.
And my get would have always been, I have a Neil Adams Superman sketch that I need to show you sometime, but my get would have been Darwyn Cooke.
Okay.
So, Darwyn Cooke for me is like my Neil Adams.
Yep.
And unfortunately, they announced his cancellation. So then I go online, and there's a dealer named Albert Moy, M-O-Y, who has a lot of professional comic book artist stuff. He's sort of an agent for the comic book artists.
Okay.
And so he sells pages. Now, I've never bought original pages, but those original pages are behind me here. And this is that sequence that I was just describing.
Yep.
So these are the original pages without the dialogue balloons. But what's great is, if I could get in closer, I don't know. I'm not going to mess with this, but there's a lot of blue lines of things that didn't get inked in. There's some boulders here that he has blue lined. So you can. It's very much like a work in progress, but it's also the finished page. So. If something should ever happen and DC was like, hey, we need to reprint this book, they'll actually have to come to me to get these scans. I imagine they have that stuff backed up, but
one
you
never knows. Now, is it signed by him? Is it
is,
do artists, she says, asking a stupid question, do they sign those pieces?
Well, what's interesting is actually when you read the New Frontier special is that he actually signs the bottoms of a lot of these pages.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Now, on that spread, as it appears in here, he doesn't sign them. So he did add the signature, which is down here in that lower corner on both pages.
Nice.
And in the upper corner, it does say New Frontier Animated Special, pages 12 and 13. And then, it says Darwyn Cooke. And these are the original boards. And I've never bought original pages before.
Yep.
The kicker about all of this is I bought this in May of 2016, early in May, and then like a week or two later, he died. So I will never buy another artwork again because I do not want to kill my heroes. So
stay away from Neil Adams if you don't mind.
Oh, yeah.
Hey,
yeah.
Good sakes. I had a similar sort of experience. I had just got a copy of the Muhammad Ali versus Superman Treasury Edition.
Yep.
And, I had a pretty good copy of it, and it came in the mail, and I'm like, oh my God, this is so awesome. And after I poured through it, I was putting it in a frame so that it would, be protected, and also I could hang it on the wall. And literally, I hung it up on the wall, went downstairs, heard the news that Muhammad Ali had died that day. I was like, are you kidding me? Oh my God.
Oh God.
So there was it was relatively.
There is a Muhammad Ali moment in here too.
Yes, there is. There we go. Yeah, Clay. They just call him Clay.
Well, that's what he was back in the early,
exactly,
late 50s. Yeah,
exactly. So. There are. It's not even Easter eggs that dot this work. It really is a history lesson, and it's just fun to dive into. So yeah. Now you also had me dig up. I'm going to make myself big and show what my friend Rob made me go get from my Fortress of Solitude collection. And now he's going to tell me why I have done this.
Yes. Okay. So This story is the Night of the Stalker story, and is kind of known for being the dialogueless Batman story.
Right.
That cover is a Neil Adams cover, and
Yes.
anybody who follows the SHBAB channel knows that you love Neil Adams, and really, how can you not, right? Anybody could love Neil Adams, right? Yeah. Anyone with eyeballs.
Yes.
So the reason why I wanted you to pull this out is because in Cooke's bio, he credits 2 comics that he bought that put him on the path to become a comic book creator. The first one was Spectacular Spider-Man #2, and he wanted to draw like John Romita Jr. And the second one is that copy right there, Detective Comics 439, The Night of the Stalker.
Oh.
So he went out, he got the Spider-Man comic one week, and then he got the Detective Comics the next week, and then he immediately went out and bought pencils and paper and those things and decided to become a comic book artist. And his first work for DC Comics, so now here's the other kicker about that story. Night of the Stalker is credited to Steve Englehart and then 2 brothers, Vin and Sal. I think
Vin and Sal Amendola.
So technically, that story, the concept, that whole idea came from Neil Adams. I don't know if it's credited in there. It's like saying
it's not, but I do remember seeing that.
Yeah,
somewhere.
Neil Adams sort of suggested the story. All right.
Yeah.
So
and have him not talk. Just
to have him not. Well, and actually, I think at one point there was some dialogue, and then Archie Goodwin, who actually is one of my favorite DC editors. You know, people always say that you follow your writers and your illustrators. I think you can follow editors, and that's a whole conversation for another time.
Oh, that's a good idea. Well, if memory serves, let me hold this up, because I think that panel right there, where Batman is fighting someone underwater.
Mm-hmm.
I remember reading that Neil Adams just had a hankering to draw Batman fighting with someone underwater. And so that may be where, how he worked and said, off of that comes this, terrific story. So
Darwyn Cooke read that story. It was influenced. Sarah, there's more.
Oh.
So when Darwyn Cooke submits, now in this book, Graphic Inc.,
okay.
When Darwyn Cooke goes to DC Comics and he submits his first story, that story is repeated in here. It's in a thing that they used to sometimes release called New Talent Showcase.
Okay.
So that story's in here. The editor of that story was Sal Amendola, who wrote that Detective Comics 439. And now I'm going to tie it back to New Frontier even further. So Batman has no dialogue in Detective Comics 439.
Right.
He actually only appears as like one panel in the first issue of New Frontier. He doesn't actually appear as Batman until the second issue. And this is the scene, if those of you who have read it, and I don't think I'm going to spoil anything, but those of you who have read it, this is the scene where there's John Jones and Slam Bradley go into a church and Batman rescues this child.
Mm-hmm.
Batman has no dialogue in this. In fact, Batman doesn't have dialogue until the next chapter when they're in Las Vegas watching the Cassius Clay fight.
You're right.
And he's not even Batman. His first line of dialogue in this book appears in chapter 5. And he says, well, that's Ollie for you, Lois. He's sitting next to Oliver Queen and Lois Lane. Yep. And they're watching the match. That's his first line of dialogue. And then his first line of dialogue as Batman is not until like issue 3, chapter 7, where he's threatening John Jones. So that kind of this whole silent Batman.
Interesting. Oh, that's fantastic.
On the periphery is in New Frontier. But, and this, Sarah, is the other reason why I want you to get this issue.
I need that.
In this issue, he does a story called, the very last story is called Deja Vu. And it is based on the 70s classic Night of the Stalker by Steve Englehart, Vin and Sal Amendola, and Dick Giordano. And he does his own version in his own style of the Night of the Stalker story.
Wow. Okay.
And it is, if you love crime and you love New Frontier, you will love this story.
I need that. Yep.
Oh, Ranger Sly says Archie Goodwin is my second favorite editor. Favorite is Julia Schwartz. I agree with that one. I mean, I was reading when Archie Goodwin was doing it. Now, in the Night of the Stalker, it ends with Bruce sort of mourning his parents. Now, I will argue, I actually think this Darwyn Cooke depiction is much more beautiful than the one in the original. I think.
Yeah, I agree with you. Just from what I can tell there. Yep.
Yeah, the noir, the monochromatic, and again, it's all silent.
Yeah.
So.
Tiger Fist comic drive-by on my way out. Hello, hi, bye. Thank you, Tiger Fist. Good to see you. R. Lewis, yes. I imagine you and I'll be duking it out on eBay over finding copies of that book. So
yeah, so that's the connection between Darwyn Cooke and Neil Adams, which I know you love Neil Adams, and like I said, he was influenced by that story. He incorporates some of that into New Frontier, and then he does his own take on it. It's also collected in this edition, Batman and Ego and Other Tales, which has, if you haven't really done a whole lot of Catwoman.
I haven't. I have a video coming up. I don't have a ton of her in my collection, which is the challenge.
So
yeah,
we're going to correct that for you, because in this book, so the Deja Vu storyline is in that solo number 5. It's collected in this, and it's collected in this.
Okay.
Can you tell I'm a super fan? And in this story is his first DC, well, minus that New Talent Showcase, his first Batman story, Batman Ego, which I'll be honest, I'm not a big fan of, but there's a lot of short stories and things in here. But he does if you love crime stories and noir stories, he does an entire Catwoman story where she's Selena Kyle, and the only time she's Catwoman is like one page.
Oh, cool.
And here's, Smile, but I actually wonder if this white suit is not a kind of an homage to the Diana Prince 70s white suit.
It's like an onion. It's just a lot of layers here.
Yeah.
That could be. It could be. Well, it's what I really appreciate about just Darwyn Cooke, at least from what I've seen so far, is that he's informed by everything he ever saw.
Yeah.
Or ever read or ever, dove into, and which is the fun of comic books. It's, that's just interesting. Because I have to say, Catwoman has never been like, the kitty cat puns, from the late Silver Age. And
by this one, by the Darwyn Cooke, I think there may even be a Catwoman edition that collects that story I just told you about called Selena's Big Score. And then there was a time period where Catwoman was dead, and Slam Bradley was looking for her. And that appeared at a backup in Detective Comics. And then Ed Brubaker, who writes a lot of great crime comics, he writes he writes a lot of series, but Darwyn Cooke designed this costume.
Okay.
And this is in February of 2002. This was the Catwoman costume for the longest time.
Oh, that's so cool.
These things were kind of the goggles that Anne Hathaway wears in Dark Knight Rises.
I get it.
He really sets the look for Catwoman until they kind of just recently changed it to more of like a eyes wide shut dominatrix thing.
Yeah.
So it's kind of scary, but yeah, he has a good run of Catwoman. I can recommend some Catwoman stories. You and I could have some fun talking about.
Yeah,
her.
I would. I am woefully ignorant of the character. I know that she's a cat burglar, and I know from some of the stories from my earlier in my collection, it's fun because it's just all about kitty cat puns, where she has the perfect crime and stuff like that. And I do know that in Another Earth or something, she and Batman fall in love. It gets a little fuzzy because
Earth 2, the Golden Age Batman, Golden Age Catwoman, they give birth to Helena Wayne, who becomes the Huntress.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, well, listen, Rob, thank you for this tutorial on Darwyn Cooke, because he is someone
I just have two more things.
Sure.
I'm so sorry.
Sure.
So he actually did mostly DC.
Okay.
He does do some X-Force. He does like a Wolverine Droop story. And then he had a big falling out with Marvel. But he did love Spider-Man. So these are the only two Darwyn Cooke Spider-Man stories. They are a Valentine's Day story and a Christmas story. And these are done in one stories, which I love done in ones.
Yeah.
And I got these as part of a bundle on eBay because I wanted Darwyn Cooke Spider-Man stories.
Yep.
And so, yeah, it's if you guys like Darwyn Cooke and you like his style, you might check these out too. So
cool. Wow. Probably the Magic Lasso was talking about how it's probably the most practical Catwoman costume, but his heart is always going to be with the purple dress.
Yes. That is true.
Comic Crack Afternoon. Glad you could join us. Cooke was king. Well, it was all new to me, and I am agreeing with that. I don't know if anybody in the chat has any questions, comments, funny stories they'd like to share while we finish up our cocktails here.
I actually did bring a beer.
Oh, thank God. He was drinking milk for the longest time.
Well, you know, that's what superheroes do. I mean, listen, again, in the 90s, they had milk ads in the back of my comics. So, you know.
Now, didn't you have to get rid of a bunch? You had like a huge collection.
I do have a huge collection.
You do have it. Okay.
Yeah.
Is it in storage someplace?
Does my mom and dad's basement?
Places.
Does my mom and dad's basement count?
Close enough. Close enough.
Yeah, I have quite a few long boxes. I have quite a few runs I'm proud of. I have all of the Neil Gaiman Sandman.
Mm-hmm.
I have I have almost all of the Alan Moore Swamp Thing. I have all of like Grant Morrison's Just JLA, which I love. You know, I said New Frontier was my Desert Island book. I think my close second one would be All-Star Superman, which you didn't quite like that one, did you?
I like the first story where he gives Lois that gift, right? Isn't that the story? The rest of it is like, I was kind of Teflon on it. Just kind of hit me and fell off. But,
read it again. I bet
I'll try again.
Yeah. And by the way, actually, next time we do something like this, I should show you. Neil Adams did a variant cover for All-Star Superman #1.
Oh,
I love that variant cover. I don't think I have it with me here, but anyway, so yeah.
Great. Well, listen, Rob, thank you so much, my friend Rob, for playing in this little sandbox and
dressing up.
What do you mean dressing up? This is how he always looks, folks.
This is how we should tell people, you know, how do we know each other? And it's through book club.
Oh yeah. Rob and I have a friend in common. And the first time I met Rob was that we went to dinner and he brought me a comic book because the mutual friend said, oh, she likes them too. And so he brought me a comic book and, you know, our bond was forged and he is in our book club. And in fact, I was going to mention a book club joke, which was about the Wonder Woman thing, that murder is wrong.
Murder is wrong.
Murder is wrong. So many times I have to tell my book club members that that's the fact, but they don't. All right, let me show you big.
Sorry, this is Comic Crack just mentioned the Parker Martini edition. Wow. And these books, I love this cover. This is the man with the getaway face. You know, these books here, you can see him here. He didn't get through the whole series. Richard Stark is a pseudonym for Donald Westlake, who wrote these noir books featuring this character Parker, who leaves. You know, Darwyn Cooke has a lot of Eisners and things, and it's a noir series. So if you love like Ocean's 11 kind of noir,
oh, okay, all right.
He does that with Catwoman, like I mentioned, but he does this great book series, which unfortunately it doesn't get finished. The covers were so good that the publisher, when they actually publish, now those are comic book adaptations, right? But the publisher who publishes the actual prose text, they still use Darwyn Cooke covers. They're so damn good. And you know, like it's so simple. It's 2-color, right? But it's just.
Well, like last time I did a live dive, I showed a Kirby mystery book that's just black and white, you know, where he was doing.
Oh, I remember that one.
Yeah, art. It's like, why is that striking me, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, R. Lewis, I want those. Me too. Me too.
The other joke in book club is that Sarah will tell us war is hell, and when they're, you know, the walking undead, it really is war is hell. That's a Darwyn Cooke cover there.
Elders, you've got, oh my God.
These kind of remind me a little bit of the same, this kind of intensity of, you know, the Jonah Hex and the unraveling, you know, of the bandages. There's some more Jonah Hex here, which I normally never buy Jonah Hex, but literally Darwyn Cooke was one of these people who he made his debut in 2000, and it was so easy to like buy all the stuff that he did.
Yeah.
You know, he didn't do this cover, but he has a story in here. That's, you know, another great Hal Jordan story. That Dr. Fate was a character in that Detective Comics 439.
Yeah,
he has a little backup, and so Darwyn Cooke does a backup Dr. Fate story in here, which is collected in that graphic ink book I was showing you earlier.
Yep. So do you have basically everything he's done?
Almost, with one exception, which is when he did. I suspect they must have known that I think he died of cancer.
I think it was lung cancer.
I think so. Because when you look at some of the characters, I'm a former smoker, and smokers know smokers. I suspect he was a smoker. So he did a whole series of covers. So like this was a variant edition for a Batgirl. And all these covers are collected in this book. This is a Justice League. Again, look at those smiles. I mean, even Bruce Wayne is smiling, for God's sakes.
Yeah.
I never saw that when I was, growing up. I mean, here, this is another Justice League cover. The only thing about this book that's kind of bad is that spine-wise, it doesn't lend itself to opening up very well. So I have this in place of some of these covers, but these variants that he did. But, I know you don't like Supergirl and her pets, but I do.
That's okay. Murder's still wrong, but you could love the super pets.
I love this, the storeroom view of Clark slipping away. That was a cover. Oh, Sarah, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm sorry. I'm reading the comments, and Tony was talking about how a Darwyn Lois Lane series would have been most welcome. Oh my God! How yes. Shoot, we have been robbed of that. And one of those guys you could sit and have a scotch with and just let him talk. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hang on, let me make you big.
Yeah, that was another cover. I mean, it's just his Superman. You can see why I wanted one of his Supermen.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, he draws Superman. This is an ambush bug cover. I mean, look how great that is.
That is so nice.
And then there's in this book, there's a Harley Quinn story in here, a Harley Quinn Christmas story. Huh. I'm a sucker for Christmas stories. I collect a whole bunch of those. This book is
graphic ink.
Graphic ink is definitely worth it. So
that's great.
Yeah, I'm still not used to this stuff. All right, there we go.
Right is left and left is up.
Well, that does seem like America nowadays.
Doesn't it?
No wonder we're all on Zoom.
All right, folks, I think we did it. Rob, did we do it?
I think we did it.
We've done it.
I'm sorry I was all over the board.
No, listen, that is why this is exactly what my idea of these live dives with people that some of my YouTube friends may not know, because Rob does not have content on YouTube, but I just think...
I'm very private.
He's very...
All my socials locked down.
And well-dressed.
I wear a mask in public.
Yeah. Didn't shock me at all. So that's the idea, is to introduce people who know a heck of a lot more about stuff than I do, but so I get to learn along with everybody else. So Magic, thank you, Magic. Good show. More, please, more. I imagine my friend Rob and I can come up with some other ideas too. So
I think we're going to do one at the end of this month for Pride.
We are. We're going to check us out at the end of this month. We're going to talk about Pride Month and generational differences in how the comics have handled the LGBTQ community, and so that's our plan. So. Well, thank you, Rob. Thank you, everyone in the chat. We certainly appreciate it, and we will see you next time. Goodbye. End broadcast.